Hey, listener. Welcome to the Vetted Podcast and our final installment of the three-part series on buying a veterinary practice. In this episode, we dive into the critical aspects of closing a business deal and making the transition as smooth and celebratory as possible. We discuss the importance of celebrating the successful purchase of a practice. We emphasize the significance of taking a moment to appreciate this major milestone, even though the process might feel anticlimactic due to the digital nature of modern transactions. Celebrating the deal is not just about the new owner, but also about acknowledging and engaging the entire team involved in the practice. We explore strategies for reflecting on the transition, stressing the need for a moment of pause to alleviate stress and recharge. This reflection period benefits both the new owner and the staff, fostering a positive start to a new phase of the practice. The episode also covers the importance of actively marketing the new ownership. It's an excellent opportunity for the new owner to present their vision, reinforce continuity, and engage with the community. We highlight how effective marketing can set a positive tone and build enthusiasm among clients and staff alike. Additionally, we discuss a practical aspect of closing day, including managing inventory and finalizing paperwork. We suggest making the closing day itself a memorable event to boost morale and create a positive transition experience. We remind listeners to plan ahead for closing day, ensuring that all necessary parties are coordinated and that there is a clear schedule to avoid last-minute stress. Hey, finally, we at the Vetted Podcast express gratitude to the audience listening for support over the past year, and we invite feedback and suggestions for future topics. We emphasize our ongoing commitment to advocating for the veterinary community and look forward to continuing to provide valuable content. Tune in to gain insights on making the most of your practice acquisition and ensure a smooth transition while celebrating the new beginning with your team and community. We hope you enjoy this episode. Thanks so much.
It's a joke.
I'll tell you, we're excited to be on here this morning on the Vetted Podcast, episode 14, Buying a Practice, Part 3. And before we get in there, though, we've had some fun around the office. Linda, what's this thing I got around my neck right here?
It's the Champions, baby.
The Champions, where's yours?
I don't have one.
Oh. So we're gloating. You say you're supposed to win with humility or something like that.
No
but
fun in
I
that.
don't know about that in the office, Well, what fun is that? No, hey, we had a great time with the Olympics. Dr. Lauren put on a wonderful day of team sports. Had us in two teams. She had us set up, ready to roll, and it came down to the last ping pong table.
Yep. Out of 12 things.
Out of 12 things. It was really cool. And that ping pong table was a table with a ping pong net attached to it.
It wasn't even a flat
with
table.
Ridges in it.
It was made of wood.
Yeah,
so it was
random
elevations.
Yeah, but no, that was a lot of fun to do that, and it's kind of funny thinking about that random, the way the wood is ties into what we're talking about, because buying a practice, people are like, do you have a checklist? And you're like, yes, we have a long list, but is it a checklist? It's more of like an if, and, or, but, either, or, maybe checklist that we have a lot of experience on, that tells you what you need to go to next. And as we get into part 3 here, looking at, and we've done some, pretty important things in parts 1 and 2, found out that, let's buy this thing, that you, the business owner, are both in agreement on what needs to happen there. And then you've gone through and figured out what it's worth and got that negotiated on what you're buying and the pricing and got that in stone. And so there's some pretty important stuff to do next. And so if we look at that, I think let's dive right into what's happened in milestone 3 to get this thing closed and in your hands and transition the current owner to the previous owner. So what we got going on?
Well, I think if we assume that we're not going to discuss all the various intricate documents that people have to close it, we can just high level assume that we're going to have to form a new entity. And so if we buy the assets of the company, we'll have to create a company that buys those assets. And so, creating an LLC is pretty simple. It's not that complicated. There's new requirements this year.
Right.
It's not that difficult.
Yeah, we won't get into that. I'm just going, it's in court. It's being sued. It's crazy. But don't keep going.
Yeah.
FinCEN.
Yeah.
FINCEN is what you're talking about.
So anyway, we'll create that LLC. There's numbers that you have to have, your EIN, your state tax ID. Those are both basically your social security number for your business.
Yeah.
And then the unemployment insurance number is one of the other few numbers that you have to have, but they never want to give that to you until you owe payroll, which is super complicated because all the payroll systems want to have it before they let you run payroll.
Right.
And so that's always a really fun thing to have to get around inside of the payroll system, but it's not.
That's why a checklist doesn't work for that. Because like, even though you tell somebody that, they're going to freak out. What do I do? And they need someone to be like, it's okay. We've done this before. You're going to be just fine.
Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah.
You're going to get through it. And so, there's a lot of those kind of things that have to happen. And it's usually 45 days out is when you're going to want to start working on or get those accomplished.
Good point. When do we need to start that? It's 45 days out.
Is when, I want to have the LLC 45 days out. You can get the EIN state tax
from
easy.
funding day, closing day, when you sit in the chair with the banker, with the title, whatever you need done for that business, the signing to work is going to become yours, right?
Yep. Okay. Yep. Sales tax number, which again is sometimes complicated to get for a brand new company.
Yeah.
James Rarick has said in his podcast here, he's like, hey, we're just going to keep using yours if that's cool until they give us ours, and we'll pay it. We'll make sure we don't owe any money, but it's just we'll have to deal with it that way.
Yeah. They make it interesting. Sometimes state representative needs to get involved to get that moving.
Which is so silly. It doesn't make any sense why we would make that easy.
I haven't, it's interesting. I haven't looked into it. It's something we should probably look into and figure out the history on it so we can understand it. But sometimes even when you do that, no one even knows.
Yeah, no one. It's like the ham that we cut the end off of to fit in the pan 2 generations ago. So now we still cut the end off the ham. Yeah,
that's the deal with the pan size, right? Yeah. The old pan size versus the new pan size.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing that changed was the size of the pan.
Yeah.
So we don't need to cut the end of the ham off.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Well, I think on the entity formation, though, so that people talk about I have an LLC, but and that's what you need for your corporate documents, those things. And, most people don't need to incorporate as like a C corporation or incorporate as an S corporation or incorporate as a partnership. What they do is they start an LLC, and then on the taxation side, there's different sides. There's the taxation side where they choose, am I a C corp? Am I an S corp? Am I a partnership? Or, am I just a single member entity owned sole, proprietorship setup? And that is important to get right, because between the S corp and the partnership, question is how do you want to pay out profits? If you got an S corp, you're going to pay out profits amongst everybody equally. It's required to do that. Partnership gives you more flexibility of cash flow based on what the business needs to do, based on some unique agreements, things like that. And then of course the C corp. I mean that really is if you're going to be a stock issuing company at the end of the day. And so a C corp really you shouldn't consider unless that you're a big company looking to do stock, looking, go public even, right? Mm-hmm. That kind of deal. But really we see most of our clients, and S corp fits them because it's got the tax structure set right for how Social Security taxes are paid, how you pay taxes on the income going through the business goes onto your personal versus paying corporate taxes, which is C corp. You would pay corporate taxes. And so really what it comes down to is the taxation fit for you. Now, all these things have different taxation results upon a sale of a practice or a merger with someone else. So there's lots of things to consider. But really, if you're buying the practice, I think the most important thing you're looking at is cash flow for the next 3 to 5 years. Mm-hmm. How do I maximize cash flow? And really, that's going to be the S corp, most likely. And for most people, partnership, I've got people going in, might want to look at that structure, but partnership isn't good on the payroll side, the way the taxation works that way. So you sometimes have to get like a payroll company or other things to handle that taxation. It gets a little more complicated. So the really simplest way to set it up is an S corp. What would you add to that?
I don't think I would complicate it any further for the sake of this discussion. There's a lot of different ways to set it up, but it doesn't have to be terribly complicated. The LLC taxed as an S corp is probably the most common thing that we see.
Right.
And I don't think we see some C corps that are generally old. They've been in business like a very long time, mm-hmm. 80s. Mm-hmm. And so, as a small private clinic, 2 or 3 located, there's no reason to be a C corp.
No, but that's to get some people to have a checklist. Yeah, we could put a checklist together on that, but how are you going to decide which one to use? And sometimes the accountant you're using or the lawyer you're using may not know either because they may not know the industry well. So
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a thing to know and look at.
I think one of the things that everyone always has questions about, and myself included to a point, what does it take outside of all the legal documents, outside of the attorneys, outside of everything? What does it take to open the doors in the transition period from, okay, we're going to close Saturday at noon, Monday morning, I'm the owner. And so there's a lot of things that have to occur in that small, tiny window that you have to be prepared for, have a plan for. And I think that's kind of what I'd like to talk about more than anything, is because there's always something that gets left behind.
Well, yeah, I understand that, but the entity formation is very important, because to undo the entity formation into another one's costly, and it's good to get that set up and going, right in the beginning. And so, yeah, no, not to belabor that at all, but I think, that's what you have to get done right. And so as we look through that, it's got to be done right. So don't. One important thing on that is when the state you're registering with, the question is the purpose of the LLC. And the owner of the LLC, or who is running the veterinary practice part. That's one thing that's interesting, is you have to spell that out in that paperwork too, because we've seen that where people filed with the state, and the state veterinary board comes back and says, well, it just says there's some owners here. Is there a veterinarian that is running this business? And that could be hang up. So you got to make sure you get those right and get started, because if you don't get that part right, your state board's going to give you a hard time on giving you the license to run that business. So, me, I'm going to look at those technical details and then get that done and get that foundation set, and then go on to, what you're talking about. What are those things? You're not saying, the way I understood you, you're not talking about from signing that paper that day to the next day, like 24 hours. You're talking about these 45 days still, right?
Well, yeah, I'm talking about, I wasn't sliding the importance of that at all. I was trying to make a smooth transition to.
I wasn't ready. Well,
we need a button. I want to keep talking. Like the flashes or something like that.
You've seen what I'm talking about.
I know,
people
absolutely.
got that wrong and missed that, and that's a big deal. So I think one of the big parts is on that formation. It is simple. It's not that hard, but you know what to put in there.
Yeah, if you know what you need. It's simple. You get the right attorney. You get the right people on your team. It's really pretty straightforward.
Yep.
So
you're talking about like what's got to get set up beyond that, right? Beyond paper. What are those little intricacies to set up? So what you need that formation set up to do these next things.
You do. How do you get a bank account, Stephen? What do you have to bring to the bank?
Well, you're going to have to bring in yourself.
Yeah, that's probably pretty important.
You guys bring in a little money. A little bit of money, and your EIN documents, your formation documents. And, it's funny when you go in the bank, you probably should bring every document you have because it seems like different banks ask different questions. For the most part, your driver's license, your EIN and your organization document should get your ability to open a bank account and walk out that day with a bank account.
Yeah, and you want to do that as quick as possible once you have those other documents in your hand, because the last thing you want to be stressing about is where's this money going to be deposited on Monday when I start operating this practice, or not. Not like we're doing this the week before, but like that first day when we're operating the practice.
Yeah,
where's that money going?
Yep.
And so it also leads to credit card processing questions.
Yes,
you need to have those conversations. 45 days out, because there's several different companies you can choose from. You probably have more experience this with anybody than anybody,
definitely.
A couple percent or a couple like tenths of a percent
make a difference
over time.
Yeah, when 90+% of your revenue is being put on a credit card, the fees are a big deal, and I generally on that, if you're working with, like, if you say you go with Bank of America, like Chris Howard, they're processing. They've got low fees. And pretty straightforward, big national company. There's a lot of companies out there that are coming in and going, oh, we can get your fees down to zero. And here's what it is. They actually have software that charges the client the credit card fee. So it's not free. You're just passing the buck on to that person. And that's for a different discussion, right? The credit card fees. But I think when you do set up the credit card processing, if you're using a big bank, usually they have that solution for you, and they'd like you to use that solution. And sometimes, like at Bank of America, they'll give you a discount on your rate using their services. They'll have a whole sheet set up that if you use these 3 services, that you get 25 basis points. And Chris might shoot me if that's, I'm not quoting Chris here of Bank of America by any means, but that's things they can do. So important thing to get that right, because 0.25% on $1 million, you're talking about this $2,500, but that's real money.
I'd like to keep it.
Yeah, you like to keep it, right?
Yeah.
So
there's lots of cool things you can do with that. So
yeah, absolutely.
Also ahead of time that you're going to want to do, are you keeping the same payroll system that you've been using? A lot of times what we see with the transition is there's a big modernization of the practice. Mm-hmm. And so there's not that the old process didn't work, but there's a lot of software updates that can happen. There's a lot of things that can happen at these that generally the new owner's excited about.
Yeah.
And so, are you updating the payroll system? And if so, that can be, if you're starting in the middle of a year doing other things, that can be tedious to do. So you need to make sure that you get that out ahead of time and say, hey, we're going to be switching to this platform. Here's the stuff I need from you. All your employees, the size of the hospital can make that difficult, depending on, whether you got 40 employees or you got 3.
Yes.
There's a major difference there in getting that set up. So all those different things are important too.
Well, and diving into payroll too, because as you know, as we've seen, there's payroll companies out there. Mm-hmm. They want to charge you to do the payroll, and there was a point where that was important. But there's things like QuickBooks Online, the payroll system that you can set up. It'll pay your taxes for you. You need a little help on the setup. That's the most important part. But as you know, that what's crazy is that you pay this company to do your payroll, that you send them all the payroll data that would take you the same amount of time to enter it in your own system and have controls over it. And we've seen worst case scenarios where local regional payroll systems have embezzled the money and said they paid your taxes, paid your 401ks. We've had some clients that we didn't recommend these companies. We've helped them undo from these companies that have cost them $100,000, $200,000 because the government looks at you and goes, I'm sorry that they embezzled from you and kept that money. You still owe it. Or the 401k. I'm sorry that they didn't contribute the 401k contributions, but you still owe it. So you don't lose that liability, and you don't really gain any efficiencies, and you actually gain some struggles, because when we want to get reports on payroll from that company, or the format they give it to you in is like you have to have a computer programmer to do anything with. Mm-hmm. So payroll, keep it simple. I think you can in-house it.
I'm a strong believer in in-housing payroll.
Yep. Just have a little support on getting it set up right and get rolling with it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's good.
No reason to outsource it, in my opinion.
No, not at all. I think that one thing is interesting, utility bills. And you throw telephone in there. You got someone that's got a landline, mm-hmm. or they don't have the right internet. That's always an interesting part too. But you got to get right on electricity, gas, water, what utilities are in your area, and make sure those are right, because you got to switch that over. And on day one, you don't want any interruptions.
No. On
that side.
Yeah, and you don't want somebody to walk up to the front desk of your clinic and be like, "Hey, they haven't paid the water bill in a long time.
Yeah,
what's going on?"
Yeah,
that doesn't give somebody much confidence in your new leadership abilities.
No. I think, and again, on those, it's real easy. Get a list of utility companies. I mean, the owner's got bills they're paying. Who are they? And it's as simple as just calling the company, mm-hmm. because don't think about how do you do it, because those utility companies know when you call them, hey, we're switching business owners here, and okay, what day? What's going on? Give them your information on your company and get rolling. Mm-hmm. You'll be ready to go. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing we don't have on our list, but I think is an interesting thing to think about, is accounts receivable.
AR?
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you going to do with it?
Yeah, well, yeah, what are you going to do with it? Because,
Or are you going to do it?
Well, what I'm saying is, like, if we already have it.
Yeah.
And, if I'm the new owner and you're the previous owner, you've performed these services, yep. and have people that owe you money, but you no longer have the payment processors in the clinic to accept the money or whatever. So how does that work?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, ideally, you've negotiated that out, what you're going to do with AR, right? Are you going to include, let's say you have $100,000, $50,000 of AR outstanding as the owner, and sometimes the owner will say, you collect it, you keep it, I want 60 cents on the dollar in the purchase price, right? Mm-hmm. So you just collect it and keep on your side, or you have it just say, hey, you need to send out new billing to all these clients, and they need to send it to a different address. Mm-hmm. on those things in that way. But yeah, the question is to go, are you going to continue to extend credit to people? And I think that depends on what kind of practice you are too, right? If you're mixed animal practice, large animal practice, which runs a lot on credit, through AR, that's going to probably stay the same, but just know the credit it's an opportunity also to make a change, to look at the clientele and look at credit worthiness and say, hey, we're going to keep these, not these, and then also we're going to not extend credit. Because at the end of the day, people have credit cards. People have Venmo. People have ways to pay without having you to be the bank and the credit on it. Because it's expensive to do AR because you have to track it. And it takes people and time, and then people don't pay, and going after it, it's probably a lot more expensive than that 2% charge on that credit card to take care of AR.
Oh, absolutely.
Sure.
Absolutely.
So, was that getting to the point you're thinking about?
Yeah, that was. I was. There's various ways to deal with accounts receivable, and I think that comes up a lot of times later in the process. Right. What are we doing with AR? We didn't really think about that or something like that. And so what I've seen people do is it's like, hey, here's the list of people. If they pay in the next 30 days, cut me a check. If not, cheers.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah, they'll put a time on it. Say after 30, 60, 90 days, whatever that is, we're done. We're done. And hopefully they've pre-negotiated that. But yeah, there's times where they don't, where they go, oh crap, what about that? And essentially it's like cash in the bank. It's that current owner's money due to them. How are you going to handle it? So yeah, no, great point there. Insurance. If you're owning the building, you need that insurance for that. Of course, you need liability insurance for everyone in the practice. You've got to have your own employer liability insurance. And so I think, my opinion, talking to the AVMA, PLIT crew is just the best way to do it, to start out with. I know we talk about, just like Bank of America, where that's not a local bank, but they're specialized for the local practice. And the AVMA PLIT is not your local insurance agent who might be your brother, uncle, cousin, best friend from high school. AVMA PLIT is specifically designed for veterinary practices. And we talk about a checklist. They actually have the checklist that makes sense for a veterinary practice, what they need, don't need, and how to best make sure they're ready to roll and that they're covered. Because the worst thing that can happen is that you're not covered properly, and when something does happen. So when I think about the business insurance needs, is most people have PLIT insurance just as a veterinarian anyways on the liability side, but they can go and get a hold of them and get set up and get rolling. But that's something that you say 45 days out. Yeah, that's just like we need to have these things done by that like 45 to 30 days out period. Not like starting 45 days out. It's like we should have that stuff. This stuff needs to be in process, not just started the process. So because insurance quotes could take a couple weeks, and then you're going to look through this. You've never seen this before. This whole stack of things, am I covered right? And all that. So that's an important part of looking all through that. What's interesting though is workman comp insurance. Are you able to, if that workman comp, works off experience ratings, that meaning the more claims you've had on workman's comp, the higher your workman comp insurance is going to be. It's like any insurance, right? But there's over time an experience rating. And if the prior employer has a good experience rating, can you take that experience rating going forward? Go with the same crew, which will bring down the cost of work comp. Or if you have to start a brand new work comp insurance, it's going to have a higher rating because they don't know where you're at. So that's something to really look at through insurance on that side. And so, but PLIT, getting with them, they should know what they're doing. What would you add on the insurance side?
The only other piece is, do you need, is the previous owner going to be working in the practice? Do you need some form of insurance on them as a key employee of some kind?
Yeah.
And so that's very specific to each case. Sometimes you need it, sometimes you don't need it at all.
Right.
But that's something definitely to consider in your situation. Does it make sense? And is that person so vital to this organization that I have to have insurance on them? Because if they weren't here, it'd be catastrophic.
Right. The other thing you want to do too is ask the bank. I mean, the bank should tell you what insurance they have requirements wise. Is it life insurance? Is it disability insurance? There's that business overhead expense insurance, which is if the owner's disabled, that will take care of business expenses for a certain amount of time. So yeah, there's all those things. And
what about to your family?
Yeah, to your family, right? Those things too, because you've got debt outstanding out there. But and that a big part of it is, though, is that what does happen on closing day. A lot of times, we've heard this. We have it on our list to make sure we cover it, but we've heard from other people where we've gotten phone calls. I need insurance. I'm closing next week, and you're like, that's not going to happen, most likely. Life insurance, if you need that, you better be at least 45 days out, maybe 60 days out on that, because you got to go through underwriting and make sure you got all that covered. And the bank's going to want that. They're going to want that, because worst case scenario, if you're not there, they want payback. Mm-hmm. And so you got to make sure not only is it business insurance requirements, it's those person insurance requirements that need to be met to make sure you close on time, because time's money.
Absolutely. What about vendor contracts, Stephen?
Those are always fun, aren't they? Well, the question is, if we go back to the negotiation asset agreement part, did you acquire any of those contracts in that purchase? Or do we have some contracts there that maybe got missed even in it, that get unearthed? That happens. And so are we assuming a current contract, or are we able to go to that vendor and say, hey, I'm a new practice owner, I'd like a new contract? And typically you can. Right. Typically, you can go to that vendor and get some new contract deals, which is really important. So that's important for cash flow, because not only will they give you a better price on the product for maybe 3 to 6 months, but they'll delay billing 3 to 6 months. So you can get enough cash flow flowing and be able to pay that, and stay. That just makes you feel a lot better when your bank account's higher, right? You build it up.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a big part of the vendor contracts and an understanding. You don't want to rock the boat right now either. Kind of like keep things the same unless you know something that's glaring, like I can change. Like I have 15 products of the same thing on the shelf. I can cut back products. You may not be able to do that walking into that area, but there's a chance to look at it. There's a chance to pit, use competitors of vendors against each other. Hey, why should I keep you as the vendor here on those things? So yeah, that's I think it's going to depend on your time, and you have ability to do that at that point. If you have the ability to do it, negotiate and get it right. If you don't, we'll put it on the goals for, let's get that done in the next 6 months to a year to figure out the vendor setup.
I think you'd be surprised at how you can actually get a little bit of a deal if you just ask.
Oh, yeah.
Most people just never ask. It's
right.
like, that's what it is.
Yeah, you never asked.
And you might get 1% or something. And 1% is a big deal on $1 million.
It is.
And so I think just ask. There's no. What are they going to say? No.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Great.
And they're probably not going to say no.
Yeah.
Because they want to keep your business. They want to keep you happy. Especially as a new practice owner, that's something they know that will set with you for a long time, and that's brings loyalty when you're willing to give. So no, I love that. Yeah, people don't ask and just do that, and you never know what's going to happen. Start that relationship up. So yeah, we're getting through this here on this buyer business needs, and then licenses. We talked about sales tax, unemployment, all those things, but there's also the business license, which that's also interesting too, because they're like, some of those business licenses, have you been open? Like, I had to have business license to be open. How long you been working? Like, there's some ambiguity there. So really when you talk about the checklist, the checklist says you need that, but how do you navigate that ambiguity? And really that's a case-by-case business, a case-by-case look, because we've seen different ways it's shaken out. I think it's interesting. It's like, when you call the service line, if you called it 4 times, you're going to get 4 different answers on the same question from 4 different people, operator-wise. So it's kind of like you might need to call a couple people. Yeah, call a couple times so you get the right answer. Mm-hmm. But I think that's one that always trips people up. It's different in states, different in counties, different in cities. Heck, we got St. Louis they've got the county outside the city or something like that. They've got the St. Louis city that's not in the county.
They got a deal.
And so, but that's all over though. There's places like that all over the state of Missouri, all over different spots. Even heck, you got people on the border where they live in Illinois, work in Missouri, or like we got a client in Kentucky that has people living in Indiana that have different taxation on where you live for your payroll and things like that. So there's checking.
Another reason to use QuickBooks Online.
Right.
Because it'll catch it.
It'll catch that. But on that, though, it's like, am I insured properly? Do I have the right things here? When I think about business licenses is understand your locale. Just get on the phone and call the local government on that area, and ask them what you need. I think that's the best thing to do. Don't try to figure it out on your own. Don't try to Google it. Just call the people. Or you can walk down there to the courthouse, the business, or not courthouse, but the government is going to be at the same spot. And again, go into the business office and get what you need. So, yeah. So there's quite a bit of stuff to set up.
Absolutely. And I think the thing to keep in mind is it's not going to be perfect. You are going to miss something.
Yes.
There will be, there's 100% of the time somebody misses something, and 30 days in, somebody get a letter, fix it. It is not the end of the world.
Right.
Everything is fixable to a point, not medically, but, for business structure wise, business setup, utilities, bills, everything's fixable. People get it. And it's not a cause to freak out.
Right. Right.
You get a nasty gram from the IRS, you probably need to deal with that pretty quick. But small things, all fixable.
Yeah, they are. And that's what, again, gets back to why it is important, though, to not just be handed a checklist. Have someone that can help you walk through the nuances of what goes on, because you do want that blindside protection. Try to minimize that chance for that call. Mm-hmm. But if that call comes in, generally it's a misunderstanding. It's not that you did something wrong. It's a misunderstanding. Just like client you had that bought a practice, is not a veterinarian, has a medical director, and has a vendor that thought that they couldn't do the business anymore because they owned it as a non-veterinarian, and completely just went with this blanket thought.
Yeah.
And really, that was worrying for our client, and then also relationship damaging for that vendor. So it's interesting. I tell you what, sometimes you learn something about your vendors through those kinds of processes. How are they here to help me, or are they here to hurt me? And in that case, it was like, they're here to hurt you.
Or are they displaying that they're terribly disorganized?
Yeah.
The flow of communication is terrible.
Right. Well, it brings everyone thinks that these huge corporations must have all this stuff figured out. They probably have figured out less than the rest of us do. They don't know the details like we do. They just happen to have enough money and power to push people out of the way when they need to. Mm-hmm. So did I start advocating for independent businesses? There's like,
that's kind of our thing.
I think so. This is gold medal I got.
You're such a prick. So if we switch gears from buyer needs, owner needs, what do the employees need in this transition?
The question is, what do the employees know yet too?
Yeah.
I even think about that. It's
that's a good point. I didn't even go there.
Yeah. Have the employees, sometimes you keep it quiet until it gets to a certain point, and then start letting people know, because there could be some unease around this transition, depending on, is this a new doctor coming in, buying the practice? Is it a person that's worked there? So we got to look at the nuances of the current relationship. Let's assume the employees know everything's going smooth and whatnot. So it's the basic things of, hey, are we continuing benefits that you've got now, adding benefits that you have? Are there contracts, right? Doctor contracts. What does that look like? And the handbook, does this place have policies and procedures, or do we need to add those in to modernize it to make people feel right? Culture, all those things. What's going on there? Not to rock the boat, not to change things overnight, but to start working on those basic things that make a difference in employment today. And depending, a lot of times when you're buying a practice, those benefits aren't there. The nuanced benefits that help with recruitment, or help with those things, that they aren't there. So taking a look at that is important. Now, let's assume that people don't know. Like, how do you paint the picture that we've got everything in place? There's a plan. I think that's what people want to know. We have a plan, right? We're working with a team that's done this, that's been successful in transitioning, that we have a plan. And then, ask what feedback, questions that the employees have. That's important. Get them involved in the process. Obviously not in the nuance, but the process of, hey, what will, reassure you moving forward that we're going to be successful? What things we want to make sure that you feel good that on that day when new doctors, the new owner, is everything's good, rolling. So we continue to operate at how we have.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk about the handbook for just a second.
Yeah.
I think when we talk about a handbook, it's excluding any medical procedure.
Correct.
When we talk about a handbook, it's saying
it's not soaps.
It's not soaps.
Yeah.
What time do we start? What time do we leave?
Right.
You know, those kind of questions. And it doesn't have to be a 60-page fine print document. It can be 5 pages long.
Yeah.
And it just needs to spell out this is what we expect from you.
Right.
And it needs to be digestible for somebody.
Yeah.
Because if it's 60 pages long, they're not going to read the whole thing.
Right.
They're just not. They might be the best employee ever. They're not going to read it.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's important to make that digestible for somebody that's just walking in the door. Here's the things that we do to be successful, and we need you to be on the same page with us.
Yeah. Well, and simple's better, because the more detail you try to get with something, the actual more liability you could create. Because if you don't follow that detail exactly, they don't, it gets nuanced. It's funny. I'm at a pool board meeting last night, and the things that, everybody's well-intentioned on the board, but they're like, we need a policy for this. It's just the pool. We don't need a policy for all that stuff, right? It's like you get way too deep in the weeds, and that adds to longer meetings, more headaches, more paperwork, all those things. It's usually, like we have in our handbook, don't do stupid things. That's pretty straightforward. Don't do stupid things. And so our handbook, it's more filled with like counter events about us, so, organization chart, how companies lined out. And that's probably, it's a good thing to have too in there, right? Is like from the service desk to the back end to the kennel help, all those things that go along with that in that handbook. So not only is it the guidelines, but it's the what's going on and lining out a benefits package, lining out the calendar for, like you said, when are we open? When do we shut down for holidays? All that kind of stuff. Things people want to know. Mm-hmm. So it's a nice thing. That probably, that may not have been there before. If it was, great, continue that. If it's not, and you hand that to somebody, that's going to show them, wow, they're organized, they got a plan, and this is going to be great. Mm-hmm. That simple little piece of work you put together. So I like that. That company handbook, whatever you want to call it.
The not handbook.
Not handbook. Yeah, whatever you want to call it. It is all good, but have that in there for sure. So employee needs. Obviously, we believe the team's the most important asset of any business, especially the veterinary practice. So whatever you need to do to keep them, happy and going, and it could be a chance also to, if someone's doesn't fit, maybe help move them along. Mm-hmm. So it's a good opportunity. Absolutely it is. So,
what more, Stephen?
Well, I think that if we just, go back through our 3-part series here, this is the end of the 3-part series. And so in part 1 was all about really, it's like the fit, right? Is this the right fit for someone to buy? And is this the right fit for the owner to get out of business? Because they're going to make that you don't get to claw that back. You don't get a month later to go, I shouldn't have done that. As the former business owner, as the current business owner, a month later you're like, I wish I hadn't done that. So really that milestone 1 is so important to get that right. Does it fit your needs, your lifestyle as the buyer and as the seller? So that was a great part. And we walked into, all right, once you get those things figured out, it's negotiation of the purchase of the practice. What needs to happen there? We've talked some things that nuance still, like accounts receivable. Hopefully that's been hit. Vendor contracts. Are you keeping your truck? Is the truck staying here? Mm-hmm. Nuances like that need to be worked out. And then as you get into, hopefully we've identified who's financing this thing, right? And milestone 2, getting that figured out. And then once you get that, we're here at part 3, where it's the closing procedures. There's no reason you would have switched utilities in milestone 2. There's no reason you would have talked to insurance in milestone 2. There's just, those things don't happen. So we're at that point where it's like, this is happening. Milestone 3 is like, we're 99% sure this is going to cross the finish line. We've got all the pieces in place that need to make this happen and be successful. So, really it's getting down to, what does a closing day look like? And so when do we close? What's an ideal time to close? I mean, really, it seems for a current business owner, their ideal date to close is December 31st, the end of the year. Because, what they can do is close it actually and put the purchase in the next year. the sale of the practice in the next year, so they don't have the taxation on their side, right? They put on this big income on top of their current income, which raises taxes across the board, so tax minimization on their part. The new owner, I don't know that it really matters when they would buy at the end of the day. They could buy any time taxation-wise. It's really, we're looking at that timing for that. So let's call it December 31st is closing day. What's that look like? If you're buying real estate, you're going to be at a title office going through closing procedures like you're buying a house. If you're buying just the business, it may be sitting in our office with a notary signing some bank papers or an attorney's office somewhere else. You're not going to sit in a title office because there aren't titles switching hands. So it's kind of interesting what happens on that day.
Yeah, but
DocuSign, right?
You might be at your computer in between appointments, DocuSign out the door.
Could be. Well, what's happening though too is that your current owner's counting inventory though, because on that day, there's something that's important. That's that asset allocation. And I wrote it down because I don't want to transcribe the numbers, but there's an asset allocations form 8594. And what's real important about that is that those things are going to spell out how much inventory was in there, the equipment you purchased, the goodwill you purchased, all those things in an asset purchase agreement on the buyer side and on the seller side need to match up because that's how government's going to look at taxation. And so that's why we do that asset allocation way back when and try to estimate taxes and those things because that's going on that piece. Only thing that really changes that day could be, maybe AR. We did some with AR that, we took over and what's the inventory at? And ideally, as we're getting down towards that day, probably, we talked about those vendor contracts 45 days ago. I want to tell that current owner to draw inventory down as low as possible that we can, because I want to buy new inventory at cheaper price than I can buy from you. So those are the things that are happening on closing day. And then, it's kind of nice at the end of the year because December 31st, that time, there's not a whole lot going on. Holiday stuff, but animal stuff wise, January is a slower month too. So that's kind of maybe not a great thing cash flow wise, but if you've extended out terms of vendors and things like that, you maybe not have a whole lot of bills. You got operating capital from the bank coming in, so you can make those things happen. So yeah, I think as we're looking at this closing day is this ambiguous thing. It's people. It's not like keys to a car where you sit down and
you walk out
with a title and a car. And you got something that's like a physical thing versus the business. Even if you do buy the building, you're like, well, I've been working at it anyways, and now I own it. It kind of just doesn't feel like what transacted here was.
I have most of the time, people feel like it's anticlimactic.
Yes,
it's like we've been working on this. This has been a super important thing. They say I thought it would feel different.
Yeah,
not that it was bad.
Yeah,
but it was like this is it.
Yeah.
This is what we did.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why sometimes I wish we would just sign real papers because it does kind of make it a little bit more fulfilling, I guess.
Yeah, especially when it's DocuSign.
Yeah, when it's DocuSign and you literally stepped out of an appointment to hit DocuSign and you're right back into an appointment, it's like, that's great. And I'm glad you're working hard, but there's an appreciation or a significance to that moment that maybe we miss by just clicking a button on a computer.
It feels like, plus, you don't have something to hold in your hands. Like you don't get to go home with like look at this new car in the driveway.
Look at this folder. Throw it down on the table. I own this now.
Yeah. So I think it's something we could look at it at the Pro Partners team here with our DVM transitions is to say, what can we do to make that a little more exciting? What happens at the practice? What more? I don't want to call it grand reopening, but that that handing off of the keys, make it more of a celebration between owner, to buyer and those things. So that's a great point you bring up as we look at that because it has felt like, this is the biggest purchase you're probably going to make in your life.
Yeah.
You might be, looking at $1 million, $2 million, $3 million deal here. Mm-hmm. You thought your student debt was a big deal. It's not anymore.
No.
Well, the good thing is now that you own a business, you're gonna bring in more money and pay that student debt off quicker. That student debt's not gonna feel like that big of a deal. Mm-hmm. That's kind of funny when people are like, I got $200,000 student debt. How am I going to take it on a $2 million loan for a business? You can. Mm-hmm. And once you do that, you're like, that $200,000 student loan is no big deal anymore.
Yeah.
It's the least part of my liabilities, and I can afford to pay that off. So, yeah, that's a good point, Kale. How do we because you want that energy and that fire going into it.
You do, yeah. The last couple I've done have had that kind of same DocuSign came through the computer, sign, okay, I'm the owner, back to appointments. Like, is like we kind of high-fived and back to appointments. It's like there's weight.
So it's kind of like you've been pregnant. Right here, and maybe it's a horrible correlation, but it came to mind. I'm going to go with it.
Let's just not.
Let's go with it.
I think I see where you're going with it.
And the baby's born, right? Baby's born. That's what it is. It's like, but you don't have this like baby to go show off to everybody, and grandma and grandpa and mom and dad aren't showing up to see a new baby and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, how do you get? Maybe it's better like how do you get family involved?
Yeah, how do you how do you celebrate it somehow?
How do you celebrate it? That's a great point. And I think as we're transparent on what we do here, we always want to find better ways to do that because it's just like it's that all this adrenaline, nervousness, anxiousness been running the whole time, and all of a sudden it's just like
here we are,
and I'm still working same schedule I was before. What's changed here?
Nothing other than who owns it. But the other thing that I can't stress enough, and whoever's quarterbacking this for you, maybe it's yourself, have a plan for closing day. So like when the papers are coming out, where are we going? What are we doing? Who's going to be there? Plan it out, write it out, because you'll be stressed to the max. Forget. And so, just make sure that you understand, I'm going to expect this to come to my computer at 12 o'clock or 8 o'clock or whenever, because you don't need that extra stress in your life to just have a plan for that day.
Yeah.
Line it out with whoever needs to be involved, the banker, the lawyer, whoever's going to be there.
Right.
Plan it out.
Yeah.
Because I can't tell you how many times I've done this, and the person that's buying the clinic texts me and is like, when's this coming? I was like, it's fine. It's coming. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
It'll be okay. And, so it's much easier to just have a plan in concrete of when these things are going to happen long in advance. So you're not worried about it.
I like the idea though of the business celebration. How do you celebrate that day on both sides for the person selling the practice, the person buying the practice, and make it a deal. Yeah. Make it a deal. Get the community involved. There's some things you can do.
We worked on one for over a year, and they got the DocuSign, signed the documents, and it was so not a big deal, they didn't even call me and say that it was done. That's how much we've removed from the, the boardroom, the heavy pen, stuff. So
I think it's because how life moves the veterinary practice that they're just always going. I think that shows also that part of it. It's like, you can't take 2 minutes to stop doing what you're doing to celebrate because you've got another animal to see. And that stress of that, and that we have to be able to take time to take a step back, reflect, enjoy those moments, and because that will give you fuel. That'll give you fuel, whether you're extroverted or introverted. That's going to give you fuel one way or another, and figure out. And maybe that's part of it, because a lot of people are introverted and don't want to celebrate that. Kind of feel like I don't want to put myself out there. But you got to think about not just you, it's the team too. It's everybody involved in it. So hey, we got a closing day. We found out, it's not very exciting on closing day, but let's make that exciting. And so we could add that to our milestone 3 is, closing excitement.
Yeah.
Make it a deal. Make it exciting. And I think that's, because we've kind of tried to also been like, make that transition quiet, because people worry about they've known I'm a new owner. Well, people want a new owner. That's great. Why are we hiding behind anything? Let's get it out there and promote it. You're a business owner now, and the best thing you can do is market you, your practice, your people. So I love it. That's a great way to finish part 3 today, and put that out there for everyone to hear and see and listen to. And so, as always, hey, this has been a lot of fun. We're on episode 14. So we're going to be pretty soon through a full year of doing this. And so we appreciate everyone that's been listening, liking, subscribing to our channel. And again, check out thevettedpodcast.com and see what is on there. Contact us. Let us know anything you think we should cover, how we can advocate for the veterinary community. And hey, we're just looking forward to continuing on with what we're doing. So Kale Flaspohler, Steve Hermann, Lindo Zwane over here working the controls. It was great to be on today, and look forward to the next one. Have a good one.
Peace and blessings.
Adios.